Are you a podcaster? Maybe you've got that big idea and you're looking for a network to join. The multi-award-winning Ozcast network can get your content to eyes and ears all over the world. Join now for the first month free, and you could be featuring this sound at the beginning of your podcast.
Ozcast.
Simply head to ozcastnetwork.com for details.
Hi everybody and welcome to the Court of Public Opinion. Peter Clayton behind the camera. We were just musing the number of people in other parts of the world who get in touch with us. Most of my life I have spent broadcasting on a local radio station, either in Sydney at 2GB or where I started up in the north coast of New South Wales at 2GF Grafton, or here in Adelaide at 5DN Adelaide, a bit later on 5AA. But Pete reminded me of the number of places in the world where we get response to our podcasts and through our postings on Facebook. Pete, what would be the most far-flung place? South America?
Well, I think there was South America, I forget what country.
England, Scotland, France, I know Japan. Anyway, we are grateful for all the feedback we get. I don't get the opportunity to answer absolutely every comment that people make. I am really, enthused and refreshed because I don't know that we get very many, I could count them on one hand, very many unpleasant remarks. Most people are just keen to add to the argument or correct me if we say something that is wrong, inaccurate. And I call it the encyclomedia because out there is a person who knows absolutely everything about everything. Now, he or she is not necessarily the same person, you understand, but as a collective pool of wisdom, there is nothing more smart than the Court of Public Opinion. But the encyclomedia, I like that. It's just a modern version of the encyclopedia. I don't think people have encyclopedias anymore, they just have Google. Mind you, there's nothing wrong with Google. I refer to it often, except for medical questions. Dr. Google should be avoided. I have some terrible stories about Dr. Google. And the other thing, I mentioned to you Harold Anderson yesterday, a wonderful 93-year-old former Member of Parliament who's a great enthusiast and knowledge bank for things relating to the assassination of John F. Kennedy. And he will be coming on the show on a future Friday morning, sometime when he's got the time. 93 years old and he's too busy. All right. Okay. Anyway, something which will be a talking point with regard to John F. Kennedy in the near future will be that the priest who was called in to give John Kennedy the last rites. Now, this is after he was shot. He's at the hospital, the priest. He is ushered into a small ante-room or examination room where the president had been placed. There was the gurney on which the president had been taken to hospital. There was a sheet over his head. And you know how in the Catholic religion the last rites are administered and there's a cross made on the forehead. Now the priest was so moved by all of these events, he wrote a book. Now the book has just been published this week in America. I'm going to try and get a copy of it. The book is called He's Dead All Right. That's all it's called. He's Dead All Right. It's a remarkable first-person account of what happened immediately after the president was shot. There was great discussion about the time of death. The story goes that he was taken to the hospital and the Secret Service did not know how wide this conspiracy might be. Was this an attack on the American government? Nobody knew. Nobody could know. Was it a lone gunman, or was it several? Or was it in fact that he was shot from behind from the second car accidentally by a Secret Service agent who had a loaded and cocked rifle? Because that Secret Service agent disappeared, so too did the rifle, and no mention was ever made of any of this. Anyway, it's a fascinating story. Harold Allison knows all about it, that this priest left word that the book that he was writing, his personal account of giving the president the last rites, was not to be published until his death. Now, he maintains that the president was dead. The official story goes that he wasn't. Now, the other part of that story is that the president, they didn't want, not knowing how big this conspiracy or attack on the United States executive really was, they didn't want anyone to know he was dead until they had the vice president on Air Force One back in Washington, so that there was still an executive to run the country, which is why they fudged the actual time of death. Anyway, what I'd like to do is to talk to I can't talk to the priest, obviously, because he's gone to God, but I can talk to his nephew, who was instrumental in getting this book published. And of course it adds to the myth and the legend and the mystery. Anyway, that's all to come. Closer to home, ladies and gentlemen, in the court of public opinion, Moonee Valley Council. Now, Moonee Valley is in Victoria. Moonee Valley Council is running a seminar for school leavers. And you know what the seminar is on? It's called Centrelink for Students. Centrelink for welfare for students, in other words. My God. Centrelink for students. Kids coming out of school should be filled with enthusiasm and optimism. They don't need Centrelink. I think this is really shocking. You know, I heard something similar here when I was doing the show in the morning on 5DN. A listener rang to tell me that the kids had in their classroom representatives from welfare, Centrelink. Don't even know if it was called Centrelink back in those days, but anyway, they came into the classroom to show the kids how to fill out the forms to get the dole. And this particular parent was horrified, as indeed I was, and indeed I am. You know, we don't need children to think of, because it's very easy when you're young and somebody's putting money in your pocket. Welfare becomes a hammock. It's meant to be a safety net. Just pure and simple. But mind you, over the years I talked to a lot of people in the Human Services Department, Welfare Department, all of these things. We used to have people who would come in and talk to listeners about their problems with pensions and whatnot. And I could not help over and over again but get the impression that there was a desire by these people to get as many people onto welfare as possible, whereas I think probably you and I would think to ourselves, no, we want to get as many people off welfare as possible. But that's just me. Rachel Plum, don't know if you know the name, she's the finance writer with The Age. She came up with something interesting during the week. Baby boomers should stop spending because they are driving up the interest rates. Yeah, inflation. You're making it harder for us millennials to buy a house. Now, I don't know, but God, if you've worked all your life, and I'm talking about the people who came up through the Depression, certainly through the Second World War, the hard-working backbone of Australia. You're talking to these people who hit retirement and decide that they want to enjoy their superannuation or their savings, or sell the house and get a unit somewhere, or maybe go into a retirement village and go for a few cruises. I mean, people have a right. Just because they're baby boomers, it does not mean that they're profligate. It simply means that they've reached a time in life where they can enjoy life. So I'm sorry, my dear, I think you're wrong. I think we all, as we grow up, make enough sacrifices for our children, and then, if we're lucky, our grandchildren, but there should be enough left for us to have a bit of fun with.
Energy costs and fuel costs are fueling inflation.
Oh, energy costs and fuel costs, and generally speaking, the cost of living. But of course, the Canberra people, the Canberra bubble, as Gary Morgan reminded me last Friday, they're so far removed from that sort of reality, they don't really care. That's fine by them. And speaking of Gary Morgan, the Roy Morgan survey, which came out a little while ago, the survey shows that the coalition has a lead over Labor. It's not great, 38 to 31. 38 to 31. Mind you, I would like to think that any government, Liberal or Labor, would have to get 51% of the vote. But no, Labor got in with 30%. I think it should. I'd like to think of things being a little more decisive than that. Now, I suggest that this slump in Labor popularity is because of the mess made by this government of the High Court case involving those detainees. You see, Prime Minister, we did notice, we did. If the government thinks it can put a band-aid on this bullet wound, I think they are wrong. Now, I don't know, they're patching up, got legislation in the wings, they're doing this and doing that, but 200, as we were saying yesterday, $255 million to just keep an eye on all these detainees, 138 that need monitoring, 131, I think, that are already monitored, with one on the run. Oh, my God. What are you running?
Jeremy, that would be annually too, wouldn't it?
Well, I suppose they're going to have to do that annually. There's no provision made to put these people back in jail yet. Sometimes I think, what are we doing wrong? What are we doing that our parents and our grandparents didn't do? I think they had a happier and more peaceful and more manageable, affordable life. Boils it down a lot to expectations, of course. Going back then, I can remember my grandparents lived with us. Well, they had to. They were the backbone of the family. really. Christopher and I, having lost our father shortly after the war. It was an affordable life, really. We lived within our means because there were no such things as luxuries. Mostly it was sort of paycheck to paycheck or pension check to pension check. We had lay-bys, or we could save up. Yes, there's an expression you don't hear much of these days. Save up, golly. We didn't have any credit cards. What the hell was a credit card? If you had a car. We never had a car. If you had a car, you were rich. One would never eat out. The cafe society certainly hadn't been invented. You know, if you didn't go and buy shoes, you had one pair of shoes and they were resold or half sold. And snazzy sports shoes, what the hell were they? Sand shoes, weren't they? No gyms, no overseas travel, impossible. Do you think maybe today we're a little spoilt, a little demanding, a little entitled? Yeah. 62% of us say that we are stressed, trying to make ends meet. Sounds kind of normal, I suppose. 23% say they will not be able to put food on the dining room table for Christmas. Now that's bad. And it's going to be particularly difficult at this time when expectations are high. Kids, of course, have great expectations. Extra demands are made on the charities, the salvos particularly, and other charities as well, of course, at a time when people have less, of course, to give. Now, Pete's right. It's cost of living, cost of electricity, cost of fuel, all of these things just pile up on the average Australian. And particularly when it comes to fuel, well, the federal government could cut excise tomorrow. Because 50% of every dollar you spend on petrol goes to the government. They could give us a Christmas bonus. Cut the excise. Cut it for 2-3 months. But of course, their pursuit of renewables and all that climate change nonsense, that is adding to our electricity bill, which is reflected. It's a multiplier. It's reflected in everything we buy, every place we go, everything we do. And that is a direct result of this government's policy on renewables. But funnily enough, the media doesn't stand them up against the wall, doesn't give them a hard time, no hard questions. You know, like Australia's 1% of global emissions would have what sort of effect on climate change? We just accept all this rubbish that comes out of Canberra. And yes, we keep paying the bills and these people keep getting elected. Happy birthday if you're having a birthday. It is the 30th. Wow, end of the month. The end of the month. And there are very few days left in the year, let alone till Christmas. American and British sign a peace treaty in Paris. They did that in over Vietnam as well. Paris must be the place to go to for signing peace treaties. Oh, why not? Well, you know, Dubai is the place to go to if you want to talk about climate change. Can you imagine the amount of money they spend in Dubai on air conditioning alone? Can you imagine what that does to climate change or man's contribution to it? But that's the place the COP28 are going. 70,000 of them, as I reported to you earlier in the week. 70,000 of these gas baggers are going there to talk about climate change. In, of course, the lap of luxury the lap of air-conditioned luxury. When I make a thing of air conditioning in Dubai, I mean everything is air conditioned there. I mean the shopping malls, I mean you can't imagine. I mean they air condition the entire city. Mind you, they don't have the sort of political system that enables the crackpots to stand up and question them. Anyway, where am I? Yes, the Americans and the British sign a peace treaty in Paris, ending the American Revolutionary War. Ah, yes, the War of Independence, 1782, that was. There's a lot of revolution stuff going on there. Oh yes, back even in Paris with the French Revolution. 1900, Irish author Oscar Wilde dies in Paris. 1900, yep. The death of Australian explorer Edward John Eyre, 1901. I still call it Ayers Rock. Edward? Actor Charlie Chaplin makes his film debut in Hollywood. It's called Making a Living. In 1913. He became very good at that. I mean, making a living. And London's famed Crystal Palace, constructed for the International Exhibition in 1851, is destroyed by fire on this day in 1936. I'll give you one more because I am running out of time. Former British colony, Barbados, becomes independent in 1966. Thank you very much for viewing the Court of Public Opinion, ladies and gentlemen. I hope you'll join me tomorrow morning at 9 o'clock. We'll be at the dining room table live streaming jeremycordeaux.com. You can get it on your phone, you can get it on your iPad, you can get it on your computer. Where else can you get it, Pete?
Well, I think that pretty well covers it.
Covers it? Yeah. I can be in your pocket or on your table. Simple as that. We have some very interesting guests for you to meet, and we'll take phone calls. You can ring us. I've got some music for you. We've got some comment. Most importantly, the only thing missing from the equation is you. 9 o'clock, jeremycordeaux.com. We'll see you on Monday. I'm Jeremy Cordeaux, Peter Clayton and I. Believe in yourself. Bye for now.
Are you a podcaster? Maybe you've got that big idea and you're looking for a network to join. The multi-award-winning Ozcast network can get your content to eyes and ears all over the world. Join now for the first month free, and you could be featuring this sound at the beginning of your podcast.
Ozcast.
Simply head to ozcastnetwork.com for details.